This is Connections. From class to career, join us as we explore the interconnection between life, learning, and work. We're your hosts, Jacq Andrade and Michael Spencer, recording from Humber Polytechnic. Today, we are filming from Humber's film and television studio. As you can see, I'm sort of getting to pretend that I'm a film and newscaster, which is a dream of mine. Anyway, this is a space where countless Humber students have actively trained in a wide variety of TV production techniques.
And we got to talk to not one, but two former students from that very program.
Yeah, James Reid is a Humber film grad with over 20 years of experience in commercial advertising and filmmaking, directing national campaigns, and documenting artists.
And Jacq Andrade is a Toronto-based producer, director, and editor whose global life experience and background in theater inform her storytelling across film, music videos, and commercial work.
Yeah, we're excited to share our conversation. You know, we talked to James and Jackie about the power of collaboration, staying innovative and creative, and the skills that they've had to adapt and learn along the way. Without much further ado, let's have a listen.
Two Humber grads. It really was, I think, serendipitous that we ended up with kind of two film and TV Humber grads, and yeah, it wasn't like by design, but I do think if you were to think back to your kind of Humber days, and that might be harder for you, James, it was so long ago, but if you could try, do you recall learning something, and this doesn't have to necessarily be like a technical skill, it could be, but like kind of a mindset, a behavior, some kind of attitude that you learned at your time kind of in college and in the film program that turned out to be pretty useful to you today or afterwards, that maybe you weren't expecting to be so kind of useful?
I guess I'll start.
Yeah, go for it.
It's interesting. Like it has been a while since I've been a student, but and it's a tricky one because you know in school you're basically just learning a bunch of skills. So like you're learning how to operate a camera, how to edit, how sound recording works, all that kind of stuff. So you're learning a lot of really tangible stuff that obviously I still use today. Like I learned how f-stops work and exposure and apertures and whatever else. So those were very, very tangible. Like one thing, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't learn in college that I had to kind of learn on the ground and sort of figure out as I went. But the big takeaway for me, I think, from school was just it was a time and a place where like I had 3 years to meet people who were very like-minded, who were there for the same reasons, to make films, to, make art, do cool stuff, without really knowing exactly where we're going to end up. Are we going to end up in advertising? We're going to make features. I think we all wanted to make the next Kubrick film, but, that didn't happen for most of us. And so it was really just a place to kind of like experiment, learn, fail, try new things, and I think that was the biggest takeaway, was just having time to experiment and have time to work with people and collaborate, and just taking that time, because I feel like when I talk to a lot of students, that I've met over the years who always ask me, like, especially when I went freelance, or like, how did you get into freelance? And these are recent students who are graduating or in school, and they're like, they just immediately want to go into freelancing and work for themselves and make it, right? And like, it takes time. so much like it takes time to get to a point where you could actually be a freelance artist and work for yourself because you have the connections and connections. I used that word.
Bonus.
We've talked about having like a little buzzer go off every time someone says the word connection. Yeah. The club. Yeah. We'll do it in post-production. Note to editor. Yeah.
So that's really it. Like it was the time itself and the experience is what I found to be most valuable looking back.
That's nice. No, it is.
Different.
I do. I have a but it's just because I went to school for a long time before Humber, where I was like, oh, I'm going to be like an experimental artist only. I did like theater and film, and then I would always like want to smash them together and be like, we're doing an installation / play / movie, and everyone was like, what are you doing? So I had a lot of like experimenting time, and mostly with people surrounding me who were not into that. Like they were like, I'm a theater artist, like I want to do monologues and perform in the next Shakespeare. And I was like, but what if we did Shakespeare and then like projected like animals behind, and then my experimental film teacher was all pre-Humber, was like, you are really going for it. Like this is good. You're like learning what you like. So then by the time I got to Humber, I was like, okay, what buttons do I push? Like, how do I turn this on? Like, how do I f-stops, all that stuff? So I do think it was like getting down to like how to use equipment and things like that. But the most valuable lesson I learned there, because you can learn that on the ground and like working with a mentor or, working under someone who already works in cinematography and things like that. But at Humber, I remember walking into my first editing class with Maureen Nolan. She's a champion. She was just like, I'm gonna actually teach you how to do things that are gonna change your life, basically. Like this is the workflow you need to use. And the most valuable lesson I learned from her and from that class was to save everything and to have versions and to always know that people change their minds. Creatives change their minds. They'll be like, I hate that part, take it out. Oh, actually, I want that part, put it back in. And that's been the most useful piece of information with anyone from like, creative director or just like a client, from any company who's like, actually, can we actually go back to the first version? And we're on version like 20. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I have the first version. I have notes on it. I've color coded it. What part do you like? Let's do iterations of things. And that's been so useful just because it doesn't just make me feel like, oh, no matter what, we're always going to be able to go back in time in the project or forward in time to collaborate on different ideas. But it makes a client think, oh, you actually have, like, you remember, what we did before. Like, yes, I remember, going back to the file and checking it out again. So that's been probably the most useful and the most useful in making me feel confident when I'm in a meeting and everything changes and we want to start from scratch. I actually have all the iterations and all my notes, thanks to editing at Humber. It's like, because there were other classes that tried to go into like concepts and, directing, and I'd already been to like the most hilarious classes at UCLA about directing, where the teacher walked in and was like, actors are children, sit down. And I was like, wow, how dramatic. So I've had like a whole outlook on that I've formed over the years, but just being able to learn workflow and really kind of remember how to set up a project for success, that was nice. That was good.
It does seem like the film and production industry in particular, you could say all industries really, is subject to this constant and rapid technological change. Kind of curious, because I know that at Humber we're trying to get our students to be as digitally fluent as possible, and sometimes the challenge is getting them to learn these new tools. I'm just interested to hear, maybe Jacq, you can start, how technology has changed since you've graduated or started working in the industry.
I wish I had like a technological answer for this. Like I could be like, this is all the upgrades, but my answer is, I guess there's always an upgrade. There's always a new version. There's always something better and bigger and shinier. But I try to just remember what makes that like spark in me get excited, or what visuals I like and why. So that then I can, collaborate with someone and be like, how do we get this look, or how do we get this feeling to tell this story the way we want to, rather than, let's go get the best of the cameras for, with no motivation. So I was just at like an expo, Pro Fusion Expo. I'd never gone before. And it's just like a full day of equipment everywhere, and you're walking through and you're like, oh, that's a nice camera, oh, that's a cool thing, like a tiny camera that I could build a model and put it through, and it looks like we're going into a world. But like, unless that's part of my story or my purpose, like, it's good to know it exists, because now I'm like, oh, if I did actually have something that needed that, now I have that reference in my mind. So that's how I approach it when I'm learning about new technology, or I have someone presenting like this new piece of equipment that everybody needs. I filter out that everybody needs it, and I wait until, oh, you know what? We just built a model. Oh, there's this one camera you can put in, and I actually just saw this at an expo. So it's good to take note of the changes and like things that are happening, but I like to trust and rely on like a team. So if there's a collaboration and we all know about the equipment, or we're researching into something we need to do, then I'll get, the details, So,
Right.
yeah.
James, I
Yeah.
guess I could
No,
throw
100%.
that over to you.
Yeah, no, 100%. That it really comes down to the purpose and motivation and what you're trying to achieve with whatever gear you're using. Like, for example, the project I'm doing now with Open, we're shooting Super 8 film, and that has a certain aesthetic. There's a reason why we're shooting on Super 8. I've been shooting Super 8 since I went to Humber. So it's got a very nostalgic look. It also has a nostalgic feeling for me, even just using it and the way I shoot it, having the limitations of only having 6 minutes, maybe 9 minutes worth of actual film to shoot for a project gives you a certain motivation in how you're going to approach it, how you think, how you choose your shots. So, you might, as great as the technology is these days, there's also something to be said about going back to the technology from back in the day. The trends always are changing. So we have like the big freeze trend that happened after the Matrix, and then now it's funny, like I'm seeing people get excited about high-8 video cameras and using that. You see that almost everywhere now, where people are like selling crappy looking cameras to look like a 90s video camera.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember shooting those back at Humber, and but at the end of the day, like, it all just comes down to aesthetics, and that's always going to change as well. So it's like, we have the best of the best equipment constantly coming out, even software, with AI making things more interesting in a lot of ways. And not to go too deep on the AI thing right now, but like, it's just another tool, right? So it's another tool of expression. Is it replacing people's jobs? Yes. But it's also allowing you to do work quicker. It's crazy to think what I had to do back in the day to put something together versus how quickly I could do something now. So it's just an evolution. You just have to always constantly be sort of learning new tricks as you go.
Do we want to talk about AI, or do we not want to talk about AI?
We can talk about it.
Are we sick of it?
A quick in and out.
I guess sure. Yeah, it's dabble.
Dabble. Just
Do a little dabble. Do a little dabble.
Dabble, yeah.
In AI, because, it is hot topic. We can maybe not go too deep into it, but just touch on it.
I think it's kind of the elephant in a lot of rooms, not just this one. And I know, like in the news the other day, this happened for a number of reasons, but Sheridan College had to close its animation program, which was a world-renowned animation program, right? Like, I think they won Oscars not too long ago. And it's not directly the result of AI. It's partly other things like international student policy and that kind of stuff. We won't get into all that. But I think they do cite AI as in changing kind of technological landscape as being part of that happening. And I guess as people kind of working in the industry now, I guess there's kind of two questions. How do you see AI affecting the industry, at the moment? And are there things about the industry that do you think are maybe immune to AI, and what will kind of survive and continue to be important?
I try to ignore AI, which is not, it's not good. It's not helpful. I think I should be more in tune with it, but I do try to ignore it until it comes up. And then I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
But I do, the only AI I've used is ChatGPT. And the only thing I know is that it could be an interesting tool for, I guess, summarizing important information. And I've taught it to learn my writing style, which is a bit spooky. But I'm like, hello, this is me. Here's a bunch of things I've written. Can you, from now on, be me? And it's like, yep, no problem. So that does help, but I try not to use it as a crutch because I feel like I can see AI writing in like everything. Like when I watch something that was written
Welcome
by
to
AI.
my life. Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm like, that was definitely, it's horrible. And I'm like, could you at least have taught it your writing style? It's super easy to do that. But yeah, I only use it for organizing and summarizing ideas. Or like if I have a schedule that I need to find the most efficient way to get things done, I'll be like, in my writing style, can you revise my schedule and make sure I'm on time with things? And it just, that helps me. But every other aspect of AI, I'm like, no, I think it maybe scares me because I don't understand it as much as I should.
So it's not like an act. It's not like an active like. No,
it just doesn't really come. It comes in conversation. Sometimes in projects, a lot of people have like AI. I guess in different software where you can add AI versions of things or backgrounds and things like that. And for me, that hasn't bothered me so far. But yeah, I just don't really interact with it a lot, except for scheduling.
Fair enough. That sounds good. I feel like James, you might have a bit of a different answer.
Yeah, it's scary on one hand for sure, simply because of how powerful it can get and will get. And I'm not sure where that's going to take the industry as a whole, but because even there's tools now in Premiere and probably Resolve as well and other editing platforms where like editing this podcast, for example, you can just plug in into the software and say, okay, this is this person, take out all the gaps, throw it together, select the cameras for who's talking. And what would have taken me, for example, like a good hour or two at least to assemble, get rid of all the coughs and pauses and everything else. Now it just does it all. It's all automated, and that takes like probably less than 5 minutes of processing to do that first assembly. And then it's up to you to go back and make creative decisions of, okay, do I want to use this part or this part? Like AI is not going to do your job for you necessarily, but it's going to do some tasks for you, right? Like you could let it just do its thing and say, okay, make this whole interview 20 minutes.
Right.
And it'll just take out arbitrarily what parts it maybe thinks is more interesting based on what, I don't know.
Spooky.
I tried it with us, and it didn't do the greatest job. It didn't do the greatest. Not yet, but
eventually.
It's not there yet.
Yeah.
But
that's always the caveat. Yeah.
Like the tools are great, but it will get really good. And if you tell it to I don't know. Anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but there are tools that I've used a lot recently, like, extending backgrounds or changing backgrounds, painting things out that I normally would have done more manually and it would have taken a lot more time. Now I could do a lot of stuff super quick, but it's not perfect either. Like, often I'll get rid of a background. It's like, I still have to fix it. So there's still some work involved, but it's helping, as an assistant to kind of.
Are you hoping it gets better, that you could do the background like with one click and then you're like, perfect?
Yeah, of course. Like if it could, great. Then it's one less thing you have to do. Yeah. But my worry is that I guess it comes down to like, does it get so good that anyone could do anyone's job, right? Yeah. But I don't know, and that's where like having a perspective or the aesthetics and make those style choices makes you the right person to use those tools, as opposed to the tools just being the thing that everyone uses, and then every thing looks
Everything's
the
the
same.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Ugh.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of like the second question, which you started to talk about there, but that maybe these tools get to a point where they can do kind of wholesale editing and like that color correction, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But what's still important? Like what will remain important regardless of the things that AI can do? And I think you mentioned still having like that vision or the kind of the aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
Well, just imagine if like, you know, everything we watch looks like a
Don't
Wes
say it.
Anderson film,
No.
you know, or whatever, right? Like it could be
Yeah.
anything. Like everybody
Yeah.
has the ability to essentially create some version of something that's already been made. You know, like you can write a song in the style of Bob Dylan,
Yeah.
and it'll spit out a crappy song written in the style, you know, or an amazing song. You might not be able to tell the difference, but it's not necessarily new. So it's like, you know, it comes down to like, you know, do we want to still be creating new content and new ideas? But I've also heard that we're a few steps away from AI creating new ideas and new things.
Yes.
So who knows what's going to happen at that junction? So
Right.
Yeah, that's where it becomes super tricky.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you think of like, oh, you know, make this clip look good. And like, oh, color correction, even as an example. Like, oh, it looks good, but it just looks, you know, well graded and even. And I actually wanted this to look like gross and gritty. And, you know, a lot of the times when I'm on set, I'm like, no, I want this to be like gross. And my cinematographer is like, oh, but if we add a little blue, it'll be so pretty. I'm like, oh, that looks gorgeous. But the scene is gross. I'm sorry. You know, like this is what we're going to have to do. But when AI gets to that point where it's like, oh, I understand the vibe or the, you know, the purpose of this scene, then it's like, oh, did it make it look better than me? Maybe.
It's funny you talk about wanting gross because I find when I read like student writing now, I crave like the mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, I want to see like comma splices and spelling mistakes. You know, at one point you penalize students,
that's
right?
where we've got to.
That's sad.
I've been reading. I've been saying it to students. I'm like, I get excited when I see mistakes now because I know that you did this and you put the effort into failing and making the mistake.
Yeah.
And I almost feel, I feel happy. I feel a lot of emotions because at the end of the day, when I do get an AI submission, it's written in this kind of style that is so generic or so I can tell right away. And it's just, you know, it has no character to it. And again, it has no personality. And I know that, again, we're keep saying it. I know that will change, but there is something to be said around, you know, what we're getting at the heart of, which is if we go back to the style question or your taste question, it's like you have to, you know, what's made art great or creativity great over the years is people and people's like general experiences and how they express them. And a robot can copy this, but it's always going to be a robot at the end, and we're kind of losing something there. So
And mistakes. Mistakes make for great art. Like sometimes it's an whoopsie in the recording studio that makes the best sound ever. And it's like, oh, that sound I'll never forget in that song, you know?
You're talking about music, and I'd like to kind of go there a bit because I think there's everyone but me has a guitar in the background, and it's kind of like a common denominator. Yeah, it's hidden there. It's
little, but it's
camouflaged behind the tree. Yeah. And so it's kind of a common denominator, a connection, if you will, between between the three of you that you're all kind of musically inclined. And I'll say it now, I'll be the first to say it. I think there should be a collaboration at some point. I'll just throw that out there and you guys can figure it out. But I do wonder kind of how music and performance and kind of that part of your life inform the kind of professional part of your life. Like what's the connection again between kind of those two things, and how has, you know, playing music and performance and making music factored into your kind of professional careers?
Ooh.
Any of you?
I feel like, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like rhythm and play and kind of developing that sort of on the fly, like coming up with ideas and being ready for anything to change. Like, even we've all been in like a jam session where you're listening and you're waiting and you're developing ideas on the fly, and I think that really works that muscle, at least of my brain, where I'm, that sense of play but also listening. And professionally, that's like everything. When I'm talking with anyone, a client, anything, from someone super creative who has a ton of ideas to someone who's like, I don't know, it's all of a sudden working on the fly and reading that person and what they enjoy, and that play back and forth. It can be the most boring idea corporate presentation ever, and I'm still like, I can see what you're going for, and I'm a little like, let's get excited about it. It's like, even though it seems like it's going to be boring, there's always a way to play with an idea or with someone's personality. And
having a musical background for me was pretty clutch, I think, for my editing. I think I started doing more sort of musically based projects, I think, at first. So it's like, and whether it's conscious or not, like, I think I'm always thinking about pacing in a way that is musical or has some influence there. So that's huge. But also just like being a fan of music, I'm always trying to be in the world of new music and pulling from that, and being able to offer to my clients to be like, oh, you're doing a corporate video? Have you heard this new song by the Black Eyed Peas? Let's get it started. I think
in every corporate video.
I think it'd be a great fit for this.
And they're just like, yeah. Oh my God.
And then we used it for the next 5 years. So I lived through that. And then the U2 Beautiful Day, there's songs, and I could go on, Coldplay, where music.
What's that Green Day song?
Time of Your Life.
Yeah, that one too.
But you know what I mean. So there's music. Like, music is such a big part of everything you do in video, that you have to. Even if you're not a musician, I think you have to be a music fan at least at some point, or at least try to be in tune with what's going on in music and the trends, so that I got a client recently where they're like, oh, we really want something that's kind of weird and kind of, and I was having a hard time sort of understanding what the music brief was, and they finally like sent me this track, and it's like, oh, it's like a guitar with like a heavy vibrato sound on it. I'm like, cool, yeah, that's super trendy right now. Every song has like a Mac DeMarco vibe to it. So if you would have just said that, we would have gotten to this point much quicker.
I do a lot of like music production where I'm alone in my basement with all my instruments, my drums, my synthesizers, my guitars, my bass, and I'm playing by myself and, looping all the same things. And there's a kind of loneliness after a while, after many years of doing that. And then I think about my times with bands and like collaborative projects, and there's a kind of energy that happens, especially the idea of collaboration, especially in music, that I'm missing, and one of the reasons I've kind of crawled out of my basement studio to try to make connections and call friends, and try to actually meet and work with other people, because when you're doing that in a band, especially, and it doesn't matter, the dynamic, we can get into the dynamics of bands, and that's a whole other wormhole, but really, you're looking at trying to figure out ways to create this thing together. And if I take it to the workplace, and if I take it into teaching and being a music producer are kind of similar, where you're creating your own materials, especially at Humber, I go in, I teach my classes, and then I kind of leave. And I could teach my classes in any style or way I want. But one thing I'm missing, and even post-pandemic, was collaborating with other instructors, collaborating with other teachers, and getting ideas about how they did it. I love the idea of team teaching, and I love the idea of being in a band where we're feeding off each other. As I'm getting older, I'm less interested in the electronic side, which I was really interested in younger, and I'm more interested in the human side, which is more interpersonal and emotional and connective.
I wonder if we could spend like 2 minutes on collaboration and how it's been important for you, or maybe challenging, James and Jackie, because Mark, that was a big part of what you were talking about, and it's something that we had here wanted to talk about. But what's been the value of collaboration? I know, James, you collaborate with a lot of people musically, but also professionally, and I'm sure you do too, Jackie.
Well, there's definitely some pros and cons, obviously. And I definitely have some takeaways of just collaborating in general. But yeah, like the reality is, collaboration's amazing. You can create better ideas, different ideas, just by having conversations with people and being open to listening to other people's opinions and everything. And you don't have to necessarily take their opinions, but it might help get your wheels spinning in a certain direction. I've been shooting Super 8 for like over 20 years, and I didn't even think originally that I was going to shoot open on Super 8. And then my sound guy was like, hey, like, why don't we shoot it on Super 8 or something? And I was like, I love Super 8. Why didn't I think about shooting this on Super 8? It's perfect. It's actually like the best idea for this series. And then we went down that road, and it was great. So, but also, musically and even just on projects, creative projects, I've allowed myself to be part of collaborations over many years with people, and going into it thinking, oh, this is going to be great for my career, or this is going to lead to bigger jobs or more money. And like that whole pursuit is a whole interesting conversation, because I think especially when you're younger and you are just coming out of school, you do a lot of freebies, you do as much as you can, and you're working with people to try to get ahead. And I've done a lot of that, and I've attached myself to directors who I thought were on the up and up, and did several free jobs and all sorts of stuff, only to never hear from them again, or have to like take myself out of a situation where I finally realized, hey, I'm being taken advantage of. I've done like 15 projects and not gotten anything in return. So once that relationship doesn't get you anything, like if you're not doing it for the experience of whatever it is you're learning from that project, then it's like, get out of it. And whenever I approach people now and I'm bringing people in to work on a personal project, a passion project, it's like I want them to feel like they're not doing it just as a favor to me, but they're doing it because it's something that they're gonna get something out of as well. And that they can back out and leave at any time. There's no hard feelings, right? So it's really about having that communication and that openness to collaborate, but also be doing it for the right reasons, and not take advantage of people or feel like you're taking advantage.
Big time.
Yeah.
Man, I love people and collaboration. I do. It's like a problem. Like sometimes my partner's like, do we have to hang out with people all the time? And I'm like, the more the merrier. Like, all these ideas and all these things flying around. It doesn't exhaust me. It energizes me. So I have a very particular perspective on that. The more collaborating that I'm doing, especially at the beginning of a project, the more ideas I get. So sometimes I just have a sentence in my mind that I'm like, oh, that could be an idea. And then I'm just like, oh, you want to go for coffee? And I go with like 2 people for coffee. And then by the end of the coffee, I've written a film. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Have a good day. Like you've brought this out, a good story that I have when I finished shooting a film, and it's an experimental dance film. It's super weird and a little bit dark. And went to the Review in Toronto. It's a independent theater, and I sat down when I just went alone. It was like this event called Trailer Trash. Shout out. And it's basically a collection of trailers based on a theme. I think the night was sci-fi, and I was like, oh, I'm going. I don't care if no one's coming with me. I'm just going. So I just went. I sat down beside this guy, and I was just like, hi. Like, what do you do? Who are you? And he was like, I'm Jacq, and I'm a cinematographer. And I was like, really? I was like, oh, cool. I've been like working on this idea, and I just started talking about my film that I wanted to make. Hadn't really finished the treatment. And he was like, that sounds really weird and cool. And like, I've always wanted to shoot on Super 8 and I've always wanted to, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to send you the treatment. What's your email? And a month later he shot my film. So, and now I have a good friend that I hang out with once a week. We go rock climbing, and I've obviously had terrible collaborations where, someone has a huge ego. And in my mind, that's like, ooh, this is like a little bit of a riddle. This is like a kind of like a problem-solving activity, like how am I going to get around this? How are we going to navigate this together? Or me navigate this and them think that they did everything. And so it's kind of fun. I think it's like an interesting way to approach the world, to just like see what everyone's about. Some people are definitely more negative and they're not about it. They don't want to do work. They just want you to take over and then take all the credit. Which is kind of interesting. I feel like, oh, that's an interesting even character trait to note for later when I'm making a film about, someone like you.
Working for free early in your career, is it overrated or underrated? James?
It's overrated, 100%. But the caveat is that it's totally necessary, and I still do it to this day. So,
yeah, overrated. I mean, I think the early is good because working for free now is when I'm like, yeah, it's a passion project, and I really want it. Working for free before was like, can I please be a PA on your set? And they were just like, you can be this forever for free, and you're like, nah, wait, hold on.
Fixing stuff in post-production, overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
I thought you might say that.
I was just going to say rated.
Just rated.
Yeah.
Neutral.
Brought to you by AI.
Yeah.
Having creative side projects, overrated or underrated? Jackie?
Underrated. Wait. It's a good thing. I want that. Yeah. All the time. Yeah.
Why?
The more the merrier. Yeah.
Why do you think side projects is so good?
Oh, it just keeps my brain going, my creative ideas flowing. The more things I've got going on in my head, the better they're going to get over time. It's good practice.
iPhone photography, overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Jackie, you got to take this one.
Overrated. Ew.
Overrated. It's democratizing the production landscape. But if I actually wanted to take a photo, and all the photos I have on my walls were all taken on a 35mm camera.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, but I feel like all the photos I've ever taken on a film camera just have so much more meaning somehow.
Using emojis in professional communication.
Super underrated.
Yeah, I like this one.
Yeah.
We need to bring GIFs back too.
I use them. I already brought them back. I'm putting little dance jazz hands. I love jazz hands. People definitely don't like it, and I'm like, you're silly.
Life's too short to not like jazz hands emojis.
I know, right? Yeah.
Listening to music on vinyl.
Underrated.
Underrated.
Yeah.
It's
I like
way
it.
Controversial because I actually own a bunch of records. I think it's overrated.
Ooh.
I think.
Okay. Well, you guys can cage match to the death
go.
on this one. Yeah.
Fight.
Well, unless you're, I don't know. I feel like there's beauty in the fact that you have to sit down and be very engaged and physical with the record player and the records. But then it's also really annoying. Like, I feel like it gets old very quickly that you have to flip the record over.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much work that goes into listening to the music, and I don't think the music, the quality, really makes that much of a difference. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I like
sure
the
Jacq might
idea. Yeah, I like the idea that it's not passive. You know, like you do have to go and flip it over. It reminds me, like, oh, there's music on. You know, I get very distracted, and especially when I'm doing activities or cooking. So yeah, we have our record player here, and we only have like 5 or 6 records. So it's amazing because we're just like looping the same things over and over, and we keep being like, we need to get more of those, because when people come over, we're just like flipping the same record like 20 times, which I'm fine with, but they're like, we've heard this before. So, but I do like that you have to physically do it, because I'm like, well, or it makes that little clicking sound for a bit when you haven't moved it, and yeah, it's nice. Same like the radio, I like having it on. You have no control, it's just gonna happen. Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie, James, so much for speaking with us. It was really great to get your perspective on a range of things, and to hear that you won't be shooting your next film on an iPhone. But thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for connecting. One more foghorn.
Pew, pew, pew.
Jackie, you missed your cue.
I like
There we
everyone's
go.
got a different
All right.
a different foghorn
That's
sound.